My name is Harper Lane, and the night everything shifted began with a single sentence tossed across my dining table like an insult wrapped in silk. Vivienne, my sister-in-law, stared at the food in front of her and let out a laugh sharp enough to cut through the room. What is this prison food god, Harper? Even a teenager with a microwave could do better. Her words landed before I could steady my breath. My boys stiffened beside me. Margaret, my mother-in-law, looked from the plate to me as if waiting for a storm I hadn't decided to unleash yet, and Vivienne, perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect disdain, didn't even look up from her phone. She just kept scrolling as if humiliating me was part of her casual multitasking. I wanted to correct her. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, painfully wrong. But my eyes drifted toward the kitchen doorway, where two small faces were peeking out, Chloe and Maren, her own daughters. Their hands were still slightly red from chopping vegetables for an hour. Their ponytails were messy from leaning over pots. Their smiles, which had been glowing all afternoon, were gone, replaced by something trembling and fragile. They had begged me earlier to let them cook a surprise dinner for their mom. They wanted her to be proud. They wanted just one evening where she noticed their effort. I had guided them gently and quietly, letting them take the lead. And now, watching Vivienne shove the plate away with a disgusted sigh, I could almost hear their hearts cracking behind that doorway. I didn't speak. Not yet. Because the truth wasn't just that Vivienne was wrong. The truth was that she had no idea who she had just hurt and how far the consequences of her cruelty would reach. The morning after that disastrous dinner, the house felt heavier, as if the walls remembered every sharp word Vivienne had thrown. I rinsed the pot the girls had used, the faint rosemary scent still clinging to the metal, replaying everything, Chloe's shaking hands, Maren's glassy eyes, Vivienne, oblivious to the damage she caused. Margaret shuffled in cardigan tight around her. She didn't mention the argument, but she stayed close, her silence softer than any apology. "Coffee?" I asked. She nodded. When I handed her the mug, her fingers brushed mine in a quiet thank you. Elliot came down next, half-done exhaustion in his eyes. "You okay?" he murmured. "I will be," I said, though I wasn't sure. Before we could say more, the front door swung open without knocking Vivienne's usual entrance. She swept in as if last night was nothing. "Girls ready," she called. Chloe appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching her recipe notebook. Maren followed, gaze, low steps, small. They looked folded in on themselves, softer, dimmer. Vivienne barely glanced at them. "Hurry up, I'm running late." They slipped past me silently, giving me an apologetic look that tightened something in my chest. I wanted to stop them, tell them none of this was their fault, but the moment vanished as the door closed behind them. The house fell quiet again. "She doesn't even see them," Elliot said softly. I nodded, gripping this counter to steady myself. Because I finally understood this wasn't a one-time blow-up. This was a pattern, one that had been hurting the girls long before last night, and I had the sinking feeling it was only going to get worse. 2 weeks passed before the next shift arrived, quiet at first, like storm clouds gathering. Margaret needed more help lately, doctor visits, heavier fatigue, little things slipping her mind. Elliot and I handled everything together, and despite the extra weight, the house felt steady again. Then, on a gray Thursday, Vivienne showed up with sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. She didn't knock. She never did. She swept inside, pulled the glasses off, and declared Tom and I are done. "The papers will be finalized soon." Margaret froze her knitting, falling into her lap. I set down the groceries and waited because Vivienne never delivered news without an aftermath. "I'll be moving in for a while," she said. "Just until things settle." Margaret blinked. "Viv, this house is small. And It's temporary, Mom." A dismissive wave. "You'll barely notice us." The U.S. made my stomach tighten. Chloe and Maren stepped in behind her backpacks, dragging eyes flicking to me with a mix of hope and embarrassment. Then Vivienne added Harper. "Since you're already cooking for Mom, you can handle meals for the girls and me. I'm juggling work and lawyers. I won't have time." "I won't." The way she said it, flat, entitled, made my jaw clench. "Vivienne, I already manage dinner most nights, but I can't take on everything. We'll need to share responsibilities. She laughed sharply. Harper, you run a kitchen at a nursing home. Cooking is literally what you do. Don't act overwhelmed, you've always played the domestic goddess here. Elliot stepped beside me, arms crossed. She said no. Vivienne's smile soured, but she didn't argue. She brushed past us, muttering about people being ungrateful during her crisis. Chloe lingered, whispering, we didn't want to come. She didn't ask, and for a moment, the truth settled heavy between us. The girls weren't just changing houses. They were being dragged into another storm they never chose. The first week of Vivienne living at Margaret's felt strangely quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. Vivienne spent evenings out lawyers' dinners, dramatic phone calls, while Chloe Vimarin stayed close to me, arriving in the kitchen whenever I did, silently searching for pockets of peace. One afternoon, while Margaret napped, the girls came in carrying her old cookbooks. Chloe placed them on the counter. "Can we help make dinner for everyone?" she asked, voice unsure. "Did your mom ask you to?" They exchanged a glance before Marin whispered, "No. We want to learn. And maybe she'll like it." The hope in her voice hurt. I nodded. "Then let's do it right." The next hour felt like magic. Chloe chopping with intense concentration, Marin nervously adjusting the flame, both giggling when oil popped, brightening every time I nodded in approval. Their joy was fragile but real. By the time we finished, the house smelled warm garlic, rosemary, lemon. Margaret smiled at the girls like she hadn't seen light in days. We waited for Vivienne, but she didn't appear. Minutes stretched into an hour. The food cooled. The girls' excitement faded into quiet dread. When Vivienne finally swept in, dropping her purse loudly, the girls straightened, waiting for her reaction. They had no idea what was coming. Vivienne stopped at the table, eyebrows lifting as if offended. She inspected the uneven vegetables and scoffed. "What is this, a pity project? These pieces aren't even the same size." Chloe's fists curled. Marin opened her mouth to explain, but Vivienne waved the plate away. "I can't eat this. Next time, don't make a mess of dinner, Harper. Mom needs real meals." The room froze. Margaret inhaled sharply. Chloe's eyes filled and she ran down the hall. Marin followed, breath shaking. What Vivienne said. "They're too sensitive." My voice stayed steady. "They cooked this. For you." She rolled her eyes. "I didn't ask them to. If you hadn't encouraged it, they wouldn't be crying." Elliot appeared in the doorway. "You hurt them. Stop." Vivienne bristled. "Don't lecture me about my own kids. They should be helping, not creating work." "They're trying to get your attention," I said quietly. "They want you to see them." She grabbed a granola bar. "I see enough. You're all overreacting." She left crumbs and tension behind as she disappeared upstairs. I found the girls curled on Margaret's bed. Chloe whispered, "We just wanted her to like something we made." I sat beside them and let them lean into me. No lectures, just warmth. And as I held them, I realized these girls were living with constant disappointment. And Vivienne wasn't slowing down. 3 weeks later, the spiral hit full force. Vivienne suddenly packed a suitcase. Chloe and Marin stood in the doorway with folded laundry, confused. "We're staying at a friend's place," Vivienne said sharply. "I need space." They barely had time to grab shoes before she dragged them out. For nearly a month, the house felt too quiet. Margaret worried. Elliot tried to reach Tom, and I felt the bruise of their absence. Then one rainy afternoon, Vivienne returned alone, hair messy, makeup smudged. She collapsed into a chair. Margaret asked softly, "Where are the girls?" With Tom, she whispered, "The divorce is final, and Tom got full custody." Everything stilled. Vivienne pressed her palms to her eyes. "They told the judge they don't want to live with me. Even the boys. Teachers gave statements. The girls said I don't pay attention to them, that they feel safer with Tom." Her breath broke. "They don't want to see me. Not even on weekends." Margaret's eyes filled. "Viv? Honey," Vivienne jerked away, anger rising. "Don't pity me. This is your fault. All of you. You made them hate me." The accusation sliced through the room. Underneath her fury, I saw terror, someone watching her life collapse and refusing to face why. She stormed out, slamming the door. It sounded like something breaking, and none of us knew if it could ever be repaired. In the weeks that followed, Margaret's home settled into a quieter rhythm, the kind that comes after a storm finally passes. Tom began bringing Chloe and Maren for visits every other weekend. The first time they stepped through the door again, the girls hesitated, as if unsure whether they were still welcome. But when they saw me in the kitchen, their shoulders loosened and they walked straight into my arms. They looked different still, sweet and gentle, but lighter somehow, like children who were finally allowed to breathe. Tom stayed only long enough to greet Margaret and thank Elliot and me for being there for the girls. Then he let them settle into whatever made them happiest. For Chloe, that meant returning to the cutting board. She lined up vegetables with exaggerated precision, determined to make each piece perfect. "I've been practicing," she said proudly. Maren joined her at the stove, stirring slowly, her eyes no longer darting around for approval that wasn't coming. Cooking with them became our tradition. Not a replacement for their mother. Nothing could or should erase that relationship, but a place where they felt safe, useful, and seen. Margaret would sit nearby, wrapped in one of her knitted shawls, telling stories about Elliot's childhood, while the girls listened with rapt attention. One afternoon, Chloe asked quietly, "Is Mom coming today?" Tom shook his head. "Not today, sweetheart. She's figuring things out." The girls nodded without arguing. That more than anything revealed how much hurt they were still carrying. As weeks turned into months, Margaret's house sold, and the small in-law suite Elliot and I had built behind our own home was ready for her. We moved her in on a warm Saturday morning, and she settled into her new space with a sigh that sounded like relief. When the girls arrived the following weekend, they explored the garden behind our house and ran their fingers along the fresh paint of Margaret's doorway. "It feels like a real home here," Maren whispered. I didn't answer right away. I just watched them, realizing how far they'd come and how far Vivienne had drifted from them. But children gravitate toward the places where love stays consistent, and somehow quietly, we had become that place. There are moments in life when the world doesn't change suddenly, but settles into a new shape, so gently you only notice once you pause to breathe. That's what happened to us. Our household expanded, not through grand plans or perfect timing, but through need circumstance and the fragile threads of connection that children bring with them. Chloe and Maren grew steadier every visit. They laughed louder, cooked without waiting for permission, and walked through our door with the confidence of kids who knew they mattered. My own boys treated them like sisters, arguing over board games and racing down the driveway on scooters. Margaret found comfort in having them close, often calling them her second set of granddaughters, a title they wore proudly. As for Vivienne, her messages came rarely. A brief announcement about moving apartments, a vague mention of freelance projects. Never a word about the girls. I didn't know if she was waiting for them to reach out, or if she was simply too ashamed to bridge the widening gap. Healing is a choice, and she wasn't ready to make it. One evening, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were clean, I stepped outside onto the porch. The air smelled like basil from the small herb garden Chloe helped me plant. I thought about the first night at that dinner table, the humiliation, the hurt, the way two little girls hid behind a doorway, desperate for the approval they never received. And then I thought about now. I never set out to become a refuge for someone else's children. I only wanted to protect them when no one else seemed willing. But sometimes family isn't defined by blood or obligation. Sometimes it grows quietly like a flame cupped gently between hands, kept alive by choice. I don't know what the future holds for Vivienne or her relationship with her kids. But I do know this: if Chloe and Maren ever need a place to land, they will always find the porch light on here, and I will be waiting.